you know, they eat the insects for the nitrogen. Think, well, that's probably basically dead in the water, from the fact that if you spray the plants with any form of either organic or inorganic nitrogen, different forms of those, the plants just stop growing almost immediately and go into a state of induced dormancy. You know, they don't do anything for, you know, 6 months before they sort of like grow out of it, sort of thing. But so we had that. And that should have been an eye-opening indicator to anyone in the scientific world that, hang on, your basic premise of your theory isn't being supported by, you know, practical experimentation. You know, or if they're eating the insects for nitrogen, if I spray very dilute different forms of nitrogen, I should have an incredible response in growth, because they've evolved to make a lot out of little, sort of thing. You know, because the insects are very small little protein packets, I would say. So, you know, I should get a really massive response. And then you go back to the old books and things like that, and there's Darwin talking about that he's got a, you know, Bonata in a lump of soil, and it's growing to 80 centimetres, you know. And this is over in Europe. He's got this Australian plant growing to 80 centimetres over in Europe under his conditions, you know. And you think, oh, well, again, probably sent to him in a lump of native soil, a bit like Ray Nash, and talking about, you know, you know, growing them in natural native soil. And oh, that looks rather nice. That little bit of, is it moss or lichen growing on that tree over there? I wonder if we can get closer to that. But I remember back in 1992, I went round to someone's greenhouse to do some photography. Walked in the greenhouse, there was this massive Bonata. It had like a physical presence in the greenhouse. It was sitting on a bench, but now the hands were right up near the roof of the greenhouse, and the hands of the plant were like hands of human beings, I think. It's a lichen, I think. But might get a good screenshot out of that, I don't know. But so when they talk about that Darwin reference, I know what they're talking about. I've seen a plant of that sort of stature, you know. So I know they're not lying, sort of thing. And apparently that turned up in a lump of, well, presumably natural soil. So basically, the plants growing in the wild always grow bigger, faster, more colourful. And if they turn up in a lump of natural soil, they also do pretty well in your greenhouse or whatever, you know. People in the past, from the 1950s, it's probably the way they used to do it. Because somehow we got onto this peat and sand idea that never seemed to foot the bill. And of course, when you think about it, how much sphagnum moss do you actually get in Australia, the land of the CP, you know? The mecca, and we got areas of this land which we call the mecca of CPs, and yet we don't have any of that sphagnum peat that they talk about. The only places you do get it is up in the southern highlands and places like that. And there's not too many species of CP that grow there. That's the other thing. So, you know, they're all over in places where you don't get the any peat and so-called, and they're always growing in this so-called gutless sand. So there's the conundrum. So we're like being told to do one thing, whereas the plants were growing in a completely different environment. And I don't think they will. Actually, I don't think when the gutless sand becomes gutful sand, they're actually growing in a low nutrient environment, which would explain why they grow fast, big, robust, colourful, because they've got all this nitrogen that's physically, you know, chemically, physically fixed from the atmosphere, and presumably it keeps being fixed for a number of years until eventually, I suppose, the sand becomes gutless again. So, I like that sheen on the soil surface. That's quite nice. But anyway, to go back to our this idea, it's been known for quite a number of years now that some plants need nickel as a micronutrient. You know, things like palms and cycads, things related like that. And things like plants also have cyanobacteria as a symbiont relation or organism in them. They also appear to have iron deficiency as the key factor of initiation of the symbiosis sort of thing. They almost look sick and dying, and suddenly the symbiont comes to the rescue and they suddenly start growing and fixing, so-called fixing nitrogen from the atmosphere. But what I've basically come down to my conclusion, oh, I've come along here. I didn't expect to come along here. Well, maybe I want to go through here. Is CPs along with rhubarb, rumex and gunner and things like that. I say they fall into a category of plants that use, instead of using iron, they use manganese, and instead of using copper, they use nickel, sort of thing. That's the thing. So they fall into a separate category. But all these plants also have this side thing that I don't know if you've noticed this. Everyone talks about them responding to salt. If you put like a tablespoon of salt in a watering can and you water the soil, all these sort of plants also seem to respond to that. They say that C4 plants need sodium, but and sodium is somewhat stimulatory to cyanophyte to some extent. But there is that connection. Of course, the answer is, can you answer that question, is what does the salt in the watering can how does it affect the soil that causes the plant to induce growth, extra growth out of the plant, sort of thing? Can you answer that question? So, anyway, start a new clip, I think.